Good evening, Lisa.
Good evening, Andrew.
Are you being served?
Yes.
Take over.
Yes.
It wasn't a question.
I know.
I get the feeling this is one of your favourite episodes.
It is one of my favourite episodes.
Because there are some definite laugh out loud
There are.
moments
Yes, some very silly moments.
with this. But at no point during this episode do we see the actual ladies and gentlemen's
Department.
department,
No.
do we?
No.
It's all in Mr. Rumbold's office or the boardroom or...
No. The executive dining
Or,
room.
or the
Or the
kitchen,
canteen.
the kitchen area, or the
Yeah.
canteen.
Yeah.
Yes. So we start off in office.
Mm.
Mr. Rumbold and Mr. Harmon. Mr. Harmon has told the staff that they're required. What's going to transpire is a secret, but Mr. Harmon already knows, mainly because he
empties the bins.
empties the bins and sees all the paperwork that young Mr. Grace has got rid of. But apparently it was a nasty shock, whatever it is. Enter everybody. Mrs. Slocum has got full Pertwee hair on, hasn't she?
It's massive.
I've never seen it so huge.
No, it's absolutely massive.
Now, what colour did you say
I thought it was sort of blue.
It's sort of steely, I'd say. It's more steely blue. So, yeah. Again, it's one of these ones, it depends what light she stands
It
under.
does.
But, yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. Apparently there was a boardroom level meeting, which was top secret. Mr. Lucas says that we're going to declare war on Marshall and Snellgrove. And I've also written Christmas baubles.
Yes, Mrs. Slocum's got Christmas bauble earrings.
Yeah.
Which is very odd.
And because this is all secret, they keep having to lean over the desk,
Yes.
don't they?
Yes.
To hear what
Mr. Rumbold
what
says.
Mr. Rumbold's going to be saying. Mrs. Slocum protests that her back is going to give out if she has to keep in this position.
Yeah.
Mr. Humphrey says after a while you get used to standing like this. So I don't know why he's been like... Has he got a lot of experience being bent over desks then? I don't know.
You were.
Yeah. But apparently there's a takeover from Lally and Willits. And Mr. Harmon's the one that actually announces it because Mr. Rumbold just faffs about.
He does. I don't want to say, so Mr. Harmon just announces it.
Apparently they're a Bristol firm, and their pay structure is very poor. They took over another company and everybody
Everybody
sort of left.
Yes.
But there's a shareholders meeting in a day or two, and Mr. Harmon mentions that he's seen young Mr. Grace has done some doodles, hasn't he?
Of someone in front of a firing squad.
Yeah, and although the bloke was blindfolded, his ears stuck out, so he assumes that
It's Mr. Rumbold.
Mr. Rumbold's, position is unstable as well. Cut to the canteen, and they're all looking at the situations vacant,
Yes.
aren't they? So there's some silly ones like barber's assistant with fringe benefits.
Yes.
And Mr. Humphreys sees that there's an organ demonstrator wanted, and you might be able to do that maybe. Mr. Granger's apparently qualified to be a chairman, but it's only a deck chairman. And there's some talk about what Mrs. Slocum was looking at, assistant to
A PA to the director of a film company.
Director, yeah. But yeah, there's an ex-army officer wanted, which Captain Peacock thinks is a diplomatic position, but it's actually the doorman at the Dorchester.
Yes.
Maybe Mrs. Slocum could open a pet shop. Take up her hobby as her job. If your pussy's in the mood, have it clipped and then shampooed.
So you don't do that to cats. You don't have no hands left.
But yeah, Mr. Granger he thinks he won't get anything.
Yeah.
But it's pointed out that Churchill was his age when he had his finest hour.
Yeah.
But he had the whole country behind him, and Mr. Granger's only got Mrs. Granger.
And she doesn't like you being at home.
Yeah, because he says that when he's in the kitchen, he turns the milk sour. that's one of those really good lines from Mr. Granger.
He says, I turn the milk sour. I can't do it like he does.
Yeah. But
that's the way he says it.
Yeah, Mr. Harmon comes in and says Mr. Rumbold wants them to see them in the boardroom, and I love the way with this plan to save the store. It's only this department that's involved.
Yes.
Why don't we see other departments?
Perhaps they've already had the meeting. I don't know. No, they can't.
It's as though these are the only people that now work in the store, isn't it?
Or these are the ones they trust.
Or these are the ones they think
are most easily corruptible.
Yeah, possibly.
Bearing in mind what's going to happen.
But we see the boardroom.
And it's changed again.
And it's changed.
It's got a window now, somehow. Didn't have a window before.
Yeah.
It's still the basic same shape, apart from the fact that the door's at the other end of the room.
Basically, I think young Mr. Grace has got some controls under his desk to change the desktop theme of the boardroom.
Either that or he's got more than one boardroom.
Yeah, maybe. But again, this is all top secret and confidential. So young Mr. Grace wonders whether he ought to leave.
He ought to leave, yeah.
But apparently, some votes have come in from the shareholders.
You haven't mentioned the other plans yet.
What? No, we haven't got to them yet. No, the plans are later.
No, the plans are first.
No. I'm doing it in order because the postal votes do not count.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so postal votes have come in support of saving the company.
Okay. I thought it was after that, but
okay. Only those that are going to turn up are in favour of the takeover. So young Mr. Grace will lose his share, which he's not been getting for years.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the problem is that 4 of the shareholders are abroad. So young Mr. Grace has got some options. None of them are particularly good, and most of them seem to have come from cop shows.
Yes.
So they include burning down the store and taking the insurance and starting up again, which apparently worked in 1928. Getting the mafia in to rub out the opponents. That's from Kojak. Various other ones, including photograph Mr. Humphreys in bed with Mr. Willett. Some of the other ideas came from Hawaii Five-0 and Columbo.
Columbo, yes.
Mr. Rumbold says these are extreme measures. So Mr. Harmer says, why not just impersonate the shareholders?
Yeah, he said just put a ringer in.
Yeah. And nobody's keen until they'll get £100 for it. Now we're in young Mr. Rumbold. Mr. Rumbold's office, and they're sort of deciding who can play who.
Yes.
And Mr. Granger's first thought is that he can do Winston Churchill.
Yes. He's not a shareholder.
That's what he always falls back on.
He does. Yeah.
But there's like a wealthy yacht owner that Mr. Humphreys likes the sound of. There's a Scotsman, and Captain Peacock can do the voice.
Well.
But apparently he's got one ear missing.
Yes.
So there's a bloke from Somerset, and Mr. Granger can do and then he comes from Eton. He
doesn't come from Eton. He was schooled at
He went to Eton. If they sort of give him a hair wig.
A hair wig, but he's got a lot of hair.
He's got a lot of hair, so he should have a wig.
He needs a wig. Yes.
Mr. Humphreys possibly could be the dancer, till it's pointed out he's a one-legged Nigerian tap dancer.
Yes.
And I like Mr. Humphreys' little dance routine. And it's pointed out he's only got one leg. He does that thing where he grabs his leg and waves it about.
Yes.
That's rather good. But there's the Stapleforths, who's the sort of lord and the lady, and their daughter, known as Bucky.
To her friends.
Because she's got prominent teeth, and they sell teeth like this in the joke department.
Yes.
So Miss Brahms could be the daughter, and she amazes everybody by being able to do a Rodine schooled type accent. Sort of. Mr. Harmon comes from the East End, and he can do it obviously better.
No, Lord Stapleforth
comes from the East End.
And Captain Peacock tries to do an East End accent.
Call blimey, you're a toff, but he's not very convincing.
Not very good. And then Mr. Harmon comes in.
So he could do it.
Yeah, so he could
and
do
then
it.
Mrs. Slocum can be
Lady Stapleforth.
And although Mrs. Slocum isn't keen on being married to Mr. Harmon, she'd rather have Captain Peacock, even if he isn't very good at doing it.
Yes.
Anyway, young Mr. Gracey's having his tie done up
Mhm.
by his secretary.
His secretary.
And he keeps looking down her top. And,
Yes.
and
Yes. He keeps looking down, and she's like, "Lift your chin up," because he's trying to tie a bow tie.
But it's like sort of gravity's attracting his gaze,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes. And then she, the phone rings, and she says, "Shall I answer the phone?" And he says, "Yes, I could do with the rest."
Yeah. But apparently the chef and the waiters aren't going to come, so...
Yeah.
And he asks her whether she can cook, and she can't really, but so he says, "What else can you do?" And then she sort of leans over again, you know, and he has a turn. But yeah, so they're down a chef and 2 waiters.
Mhm.
So who's left that could play these parts, I
Yes.
wonder?
Mhm.
So now we're in the kitchen area,
Yes.
and enter Captain Peacock and Mr. Lucas in very ill-fitting
Suits.
waiter's suits. Mr. Lucas is the head waiter, and his front thing keeps on curling up.
And
doesn't it?
he's got cuffs but no
He's
sleeves.
got cuffs,
He's
but
got no
there's a huge
shirt
gap.
on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Captain Peacock's trousers are
Very short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so yeah, and of course they don't like that. Well, Mr. Lucas likes being in charge, but
Yeah.
Captain Peacock doesn't like having Mr. Lucas over him, does
No.
he? And then enter Mr. Humphreys in full chef.
Yes. We get a wail, don't you, from the other room first
Yeah.
of all.
And then he's referred to as Fanny Craddock at one point because he doesn't like the menu. Cause
No, it's very
it's
complicated.
all too complicated. Even the smoked eel, which might be a bit easier, is just frozen stiff, isn't
It
it?
is. He bangs it on the table and it doesn't budge, does it?
Yeah. So Mr. Lucas starts doing clicking of his fingers
Mm-hmm.
to Captain Peacock, and that's where you see the cuffs, isn't
Yes. Yeah.
it? Mr. Humphrey says his trousers are too tight and his potatoes are boiling. The head waiter's got to announce the guests,
Mm-hmm.
and he says to Captain Peacock that his trousers will ride down with wear.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Lucas is stood by the door as the guests come in, and he gets the door in the face
He
at
does.
first, doesn't he?
Yes. He has to move over a little bit.
So the guests start to come in, and he has to announce them all. And one of the best is who is it playing the
Mavis
lady?
Pugh
Mavis
plays
Pugh.
Lady Lavender in You Rang My Lord.
But here she's playing Lady Weeblabelsmith.
Yes.
Sorry,
But he didn't get it.
Lady Weeblabelsmith. Lady Weeblabelsmith.
He just does it really quickly, doesn't he? Just to...
Then enter Mr. Granger with his wonderfully ill-fitting wig on.
I think he's doing a Kenneth Cope. I think he's got it on back to front.
He probably has, yeah. But then the sight of this just makes.
Yeah, Trevor
Trevor
Bannister
Bannister laugh.
actually just laughs, and they kept it in because it looks quite good.
Your name, sir. And
Wait, no, first of all, he goes Ernest Granger,
Yeah.
doesn't he? No, that's character you're playing, you Burke.
and this is just how he speaks for the
Yeah.
rest of the scene,
Yeah.
really.
So Richard Ryan is
Yeah.
playing.
But enter Mr. Harmon, Mrs. Slocum, and then Miss Brahms, who's got the joke teeth in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hello! It's very, very posh, isn't she?
Well, she was quite posh in the Whodunit we saw her in the other day.
All right, okay. Yeah, and Mr. Humphreys, he had a bit of an accident, isn't he? Because
Yes.
his hat is all singed with a great big hole
And
burnt
he's got a
in
black bit on his nose and a black bit on his top, sort of on here.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then to announce that dinner is served, he just sort of flounces out and bangs 2 pot lids together,
He does,
doesn't he?
yes.
Yeah. But
And whatever soup he's got, it's really thick because when they pour it out, it just sort of.
and there's a load of business with the swinging door as
Yes,
well, isn't it?
yes.
Every time anybody goes through
They
it.
get hit in the face
Yeah.
or the bottom.
Some soup is spilled.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Granger's wig is grabbed to mop it up, and then it gets put back on him wrong, doesn't it?
And he just looks surprised.
Yeah. Then Mr. Humphrey's souffle is out of control,
Yes.
isn't it?
And he's sort of trying to press down on it to get it to go down.
And this is like one of the proper visual effects bits in this
Yes.
episode, as it keeps on like breathing, doesn't it, and getting bigger and bigger. And it did remind me of the sort of thing that from Butterflies. Cause,
Oh right, yeah, she's a really bad
yeah,
cook,
when
isn't she?
Rhea used to make stuff, there'd all be like this sort of stuff that they'd make. It would like all be solid or something like that. But yeah, Mr. Lucas gets the door up the arse at one point, and the souffle just deflates in the
Yes.
end, doesn't it? It just goes down. And Mr. Humphreys is sort of upset at all this, and he's saying how he can't get on. So they say they should start the speeches instead. So Mr. Harmon does this great big long speech about the spirit of Drake and Raleigh, and young Mr. Grace is asleep.
Yeah.
And then they suggest going for a decent nosh at the best restaurant.
Actually, I think he says breast.
Does he?
It really sounds like he says breast restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah. It might just be a slur.
Oh, and I've skipped over the Yorkshire puddings as well.
Yeah, they deflate.
There was a tray of Yorkshires that just went down as well.
Visual Effects is having fun on this episode.
Yeah, John Horton, I think
John
it is.
Horton, yeah.
But yeah, they're going on for a decent nosh. And are the staff invited? And Mr. Harmon says, well, if he has a word, he can get them to something to eat with the staff
in the kitchen.
In the kitchen, and yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it? And then you get the end credits.
Yes.
And some of the weird ones are a shot of Captain Peacock's feet.
Yes.
And the last few credits are done over the souffle. Just sort of breathing up and down a bit.
Yes. Somebody's got their rubber bladder out, haven't they?
Yeah. But yeah, I did like that. It's some very, very good moments. And again, I think sort of Mr. Granger gets some really great bits. And I really am going to miss him when he's not there.
Yeah, there's only a couple more episodes.
With Mr. Granger.
Actually, in fact, next week's episode is cool. It says it's either Goodbye Mr. Granger or Farewell Mr. Granger. Yeah. But I don't think it's quite that episode.
It isn't, but
no.
They think it is for a bit. But yeah, that's certainly one of my highlights of recent episodes, I think. And yeah, again, you're sort of playing up to changing it around a bit, aren't you? Seeing them in a different situation.
And giving Arthur English quite a lot to do.
And as you said, Mr. Harmon gets a lot more to do than Mr. Mash ever did.
It's like they've suddenly realised Arthur English is a really good actor, so let's use him.
It's like he's been promoted to like equal with everybody else.
And from this point onwards, he will be more involved in all of it, because there are many episodes to come where he will be part of the fun.
And essentially, it's his speech that saves the whole story in the end. So so, whilst everybody else is
bickering and
faffing
fighting,
about, Mr. Harmon's got his head screwed on, hasn't he?
And he gives this sort of real barnstorm.
So he's very, very useful. Yeah,
he is. He is, and I think possibly that is. And this is not to make a political point, but because he's the shop steward of his union, he's obviously been to trade union conferences, and he's probably used to doing speeches like that. So
that's true.
There might be a little tiny point in there somewhere, or it might have never occurred to them at all.
All right. Okay. Interesting.
That might be my interpretation.
No, very, very good one. That I thought. So
and it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the lady relationship.
Lou Smith.
Because it's like because he says pardon once, and then he can't say pardon again. So he
he's
just
got to have his
go
best
for
shot.
it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go then. We'll be back again with another one soon. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.